All right. I am back with part 2 of this week's week 2's lessons. And so we're going to get into section 6.4, which is solving linear inequalities using addition and subtraction. And so just a little basis on what we're doing here is just like solving equations, when you add something to one side, you must add it to the other. When we take something away from one side, we must take it away from the other side. And when we multiply on one side, we must multiply on the other side. And you guys get the point, right? So what we do to one side of an equation, we must do to the other. What we do on one side of an inequality, we must do to the other. So we're just going to dive into this. We know that -2 is less than 4. Yes, that's true. Great. So if it's true, then if I add a positive number to both sides of that inequality, I should maintain truth, right? So if I add a positive number, I'm just going to use 1. It's nice and simple. -2 plus 1 equals -1. And 4 plus 1 equals 5. Well, yes, -1 is still less than 5. So still true. Now I can do the same thing, but with a negative number. If I take -2, but then I am adding a -1 to that side, and I'm adding a -1 to this side. It's kind of like saying -2 take away 1. Well, that's going to get me just more negatives, -3. And 4 plus -1 is like taking away 1. So 4 take away 1 is a +3. Well, we know that a -3 is less than 3. So that is still true. So by adding a number to both sides, it will maintain truth. So we can do the same thing. We can just check that out. It's going to work the same way as if we subtract a number. So if I go -2, take away, I'll just use a slightly more difficult number. I'll take away 5. So it's a +5, but it's being taken away. And if I do it to that side, I have to do it to this side as well. So -2 take away 5 means that I just have more negatives altogether. And that gives me -7. 4 take away 5 is going to be -1. Well, -1 is still a bigger number than -7. So -7 is less than -1. Then I've got the same idea, but I want to take away a negative number. So maybe I'll take away -3 on both sides. Okay, so -2 take away a negative means that I'm actually going to be adding that. So I'm actually going to be going in my brain +3, okay, which gives me 1. Then 4 take away a negative is like in my brain adding a number. So that's 7. So 7 is still a bigger number than 1. So 1 is less than, we would read that left to right, less than 7. Okay? So now we'll get into how can we apply this to our equations. So equations, what I would do with an equation is, here I have h is +3. So what number +3 gets me 5? My guess and check method tells me 2 + 3 equals 5. Or lots of us are getting used to this. I'm going to do the opposite and take away a 3 on both sides because I want to do opposites. So h now equals 2. Okay, there is only one solution with an equation. That's what's the difference. Whereas in inequality, now when I take away 3 on both sides, h is going to be less than 2. So now I have an infinite number of solutions. So any number that is less than 2 is going to fit this. So a number less than 2 would be things like 1 or 0 or -1 or -2, those are all less than 2. So I could fit any of those and so on, right? Are all going to be less than a 2. So that provides me infinite solutions. Okay, just going to turn that over. Oh, one moment. Like I said, I'm not editing anything. I'm keeping it simple. All right, so what I've got going on here is just a few more equations to solve, some examples. So when I'm solving here, let's go with a green marker. I've got x minus 4.5. So the opposite of that would be to add a 4.5 to both sides. Okay, and when I add then 6.2 plus 4.5, I am going to get 10.7 is less than or equal to x. Okay, and so when I do that, I then have to go ahead and find my 10.7, so that's between halfway, it's more than halfway, so we're just going to say about here. And it should be a solid circle because of that less than or equal to. Now, x is the larger value, so I could actually rewrite that as x is greater than or equal to 10.7. And then that tells me that I'm looking for values that are bigger. So I'm going to go in this direction and emphasize my arrow. Okay, doing the same thing here. But in this case, I might take away the 4.8, take away 4.8, a negative 3.2, take away 4.8, is going to give me a more negative number. So what I have there is -8. C is greater than -8. Now notice that it's greater than, so I can go ahead and put a hollow circle. And then I want to make it go in the same direction where we're greater than. Just like that. Then you guys get into some word problems. So we see a word problem here. Jake plans to board his dog while he is away on vacation. Unfortunately, we can't get away on vacation and we can't be boarding dogs at the moment, but someday we will be able to. So there's two scenarios. He could go with boarding house A, which charges $90 plus a $5 a day. So we can write that part of the expression as 90 plus 5 times D, so times the number of days. So 1 day, it's going to be $95. 2 days, it's going to be 90 plus 10, right? And get 100. Boarding house B charges 100 plus $4 a day. So slightly different, very similar, but it's going to depend on your number of days. Now, the main part of the question here says, for how many days must Jake board his dog in house A to be less expensive than B? So we're going to make this a less than statement. So in order for it to be, A has to be less than the cost of B. So we're going to solve the inequality just like we would an equation. So that means that we want to get our D values on the same side. So I might take away a 4D on both sides. So that leaves me with 90 plus just 1D is less than 100. Now I want to get that 90 over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract it. That leaves me with D is less than 10. So in order for things to be cheaper with boarding house A, Jake would have to have his dog there for less than 10 days, so 9 days or less. Now, because they're going to charge by the day, this is a situation where we may not, so we can go ahead, if you'd like, you can put the open circle there, or not, but we're just going to have days. So now that's assuming that they charge for a full day even if you're not there for. Now, of course, you're not going to have negative numbers anyway, so I could just leave that out of it, because you don't have negative days. But so that would give you an idea of how much he could be there for. Okay, and that's the end of part 2. And I will also post a assignment with some questions for you to practice with in the notebook there. Okay, so just underneath this video. Perfect.